On a road near the mountains, James is driving his car at a dangerous speed. When he gets distracted for a second, he almost misses the truck in front of him, so he has to make a sudden turn to dodge it and ends up running over some suitcases instead. Mary rushes to pick her things up and James tries to help her, however they aren't fast enough and the bus leaves without her. Her original plan was to go to the city, but now she has no choice but return to her hometown Silent Hill, so James offers to drive her there as an apology. At that moment the wind starts blowing and the clouds move to cover the sun, so Mary explains this is a Silent Hill summer storm. Suddenly Mary appears to be drowning underwater, only for a very drunk James to wake up in a club. His phone keeps ringing, but he ignores it and continues to drink. A waitress tells him it's time for him to go, so James stands up and accidentally bumps into her, causing her to drop some glasses. The bouncer approaches James to kick him out, but James pushes him onto the tables. Then he tries to pick up his ringing phone, but the bouncer grabs him from behind. James headbutts him to get him off, only for two more bouncers to grab him and finally kick him out of the club by throwing him on a pile of trash. The phone rings again, and James finally picks up. It's his therapist M, who is disappointed to hear he's drunk and reminds him that he shouldn't feel guilty. M tells him to go home and rest for an appointment tomorrow. At his apartment, James looks at a painting he did of Mary and her face flashes in his head. He tries to drink more to forget, however his last bottle is empty. He throws it on the floor and watches it roll until it stops next to an envelope with his name. James opens the letter and is shocked to read it's from Mary. She knows it's been a long time since their breakup, but something has happened so she needs him to come to their old home in Silent Hill. James decides to drive to Silent Hill in the middle of the night under a raging storm. When he makes it to the mountain tunnel, he finds it closed. He drives back to the bus station and parks the car to sleep for the night. His dreams are filled with memories of his life with Mary. After he drove her home, they started dating and he decided to stay in Silent Hill with her. Sometimes when they kissed, her nose would drip blood on his face. Eventually they broke up and James moved back to the city, where he became an alcoholic. In the morning, James decides to walk the rest of the way to Silent Hill. After wandering through the woods for a while, he finds fog covering the area and ash falling from the sky. Nearby, a woman named Angela is moving some heavy bags and asks James to help her. He asks about the ash, so Angela explains there was a fire in the summer that burnt down the forest and didn't stop until it rained. The water treatment plant was overrun by the floods and the water got contaminated, so people left the town. James decides to continue his journey anyway while thinking about Mary. When he agreed to move in with her, she admitted that she was worried her true nature would scare him off. However, James promised to always be by her side. After lots of walking, James finally makes it to Silent Hill, which is covered in ash and fog. James starts yelling but nobody comes out. Suddenly he starts hearing music, so he follows the noise until he enters a tunnel where a radio is playing. There's also a blanket on the ground with a person underneath. When James tries to communicate, he hears a noise behind him and the radio stops working. At that moment a hobo jumps out of the blanket and tells James that they're coming back but refuses to elaborate, so James runs out of the tunnel. Then James gets a call from M, but he ignores her scolding because he notices that there's a sign glowing on top of a nightclub door. Meanwhile the hobo sees a monster known as Lying Figure appear at the entrance of the tunnel. When James enters the nightclub, he remembers the time Mary brought him here and introduced him to her friends. All the locals knew her because her father built the town and gave them purpose. Suddenly James hears the hobo scream and runs back to check on him, only to find his body disintegrating on the ground. The radio starts playing static noises and James is shocked to see the lying figure approaching him. The creature opens its chest and starts spouting acid, so James quickly dodges it and throws a tool to bring it down. The monster then crawls under a van and disappears into the sewers. Afterward the radio starts playing an emergency broadcast that asks all the residents to evacuate. This is followed by an alarm that begins to wail through town and several lying figures appear on the street as a deep darkness covers the ground and the buildings. James immediately grabs the radio and starts running, dodging all the lying figures and the acid shots that try to stop him. After lots of running, James trips and falls, causing all the rats in the area to flee. He watches in horror as some weird cockroaches called creepers emerge from a grill and attack a rat to bring it to their nest. A roach also approaches James, who immediately smashes it on the ground. Suddenly hundreds of creepers come out and chase after James, who has to keep running. In a random alley, he sees the creepers successfully attacking a lying figure. He ends up falling again and accidentally dropping the tool, but he can't retrieve it because the creepers quickly walk over it. Eventually he finds a fence and manages to cross it by walking through a hole. The creepers begin climbing the fence and watch him escape. Then James enters an apartment building and locks the door with some wooden planks. Soon the creepers arrive and climb on the glass, but they can't get in so they just stare. As James looks around, a bleeding woman appears behind him, but when he turns around she's gone. He points his phone flashlight at the stairs and sees a figure disappearing. James wonders if it was Mary and remembers the day they moved to this building. He takes the stairs and reaches the next floor, only to find the next stairs blocked by a gate. Then James enters an apartment and finds a glowing TV. A box next to it has a bunch of tapes labeled with the months of 2017. As he comes closer, he has a vision of bloodstained hands touching a body, and he falls on his knees as a pitching sound causes him to have a terrible headache. The visions continue, so James calls Em to tell her his head hurts a lot. Em wants to know where he is, but James only says he's getting closer. At that moment the call ends because his phone is out of battery. Then James runs to the balcony and feels the rain falling on his head. On the apartment above his, there's a silhouette waiting. Meanwhile, Em keeps trying to call James to no avail. She then makes a mysterious call saying that her patient violated the procedure, so she'll need a wellness check. Afterward, James climbs the balconies to reach the apartment above his. When he goes inside, he discovers that the silhouette is a bunch of moths on top of a mannequin. He looks at the mannequin's dress and remembers Mary used to have one like this. There's a light at the back, so James follows it to find a flashlight in what appears to be a very creepy shrine that has more moths inside a plastic head. This triggers another memory. One day when he came back from the grocery store, James found Mary surrounded by a gothic crowd in the darkness. They were telling her that love can twist someone's head and they needed her to stay focused. As soon as they saw James watching them, they opened the curtains and acted all friendly with him before leaving the apartment. James freaked out because these weird people kept showing up in their apartment unannounced, but Mary defended them, saying they were her only family since her father died. He apologized with a hug, but was creeped out again when he saw the shrine and the head inside it. Mary immediately closed the shrine doors and asked James not to think about it, distracting him with a kiss. In the present, James finds a medical report from Brookhaven Hospital that mentions an acute asthma attack and has Mary's name. At that moment he hears someone coughing and goes to investigate. In a bathroom, he finds a sick-looking Eddie puking in a toilet. Eddie wonders why James isn't ill like everyone else, so James explains he's looking for someone, which makes Eddie laugh. After pointing out that there's nobody left, Eddie explains that something big happened which caused the fires, contaminated the water, and drove everyone crazy. People were bleeding to death in the streets and then the monsters started appearing. Eddie shows James a rotting wound on his arm and tells him he's lucky. Suddenly they hear a baby crying in the distance, so the men go looking for it. They turn around a corner only to find the corridor blocked by bars. On the other side, they see Laura trying to hide. Eddie thinks they should leave her, but James reaches through the bars and tries to convince her to come with them. When Laura is about to take his hand, the radio starts screeching and they hear a spooky noise at the end of the corridor. Eddie insists they need to leave and James is having an awful headache, but he refuses to go without the girl. As the noise gets closer, Eddie yells at Laura to make her hide again, then he kicks James and runs away. When James looks up, he discovers the noise comes from Pyramid Head and his huge sword. Pyramid Head reaches through the bars and tries to grab James, who immediately starts running away. While Pyramid Head begins to headbutt the bars to break them, James finds a mannequin monster. It turns around to look at him only for the head to drop and roll on the floor. Its eyes look at James as the body transforms into a spider. James quickly runs again while the mannequin puts on its head and bugs come out of its mouth. After bursting through another door, James enters an apartment but finds all the windows sealed. He can hear the mannequin spider coming for him, so he hides inside a closet and spies on the monster through a crack in the wall. As the spider begins searching the apartment, Pyramid Head bursts in too. The spider immediately jumps on him, but Pyramid Head easily pushes it on the table and hits its limbs with his sword. Then he starts beating the spider up and James has to cover his mouth not to scream. Afterward, Pyramid Head opens the closet and takes a close look at James, who can see human eyes inside the helmet. Suddenly the town alarm starts wailing and both of them grab their heads as they yell in pain. Hours later, James wakes up alone in the closet. He comes out and discovers that the place looks normal. There's also Angela lying on the floor. When Angela tells him that he can't save her, he desperately comes closer demanding an explanation, but Angela keeps him at bay with a knife. She then collapses in tears. James runs out of the building and on top of a wall he finds Laura, who asks him to catch her before she jumps down. She has a doll in her hand and says that Mary gave it to her. When James tries to ask for details, Laura sees something and starts running. James follows her, unaware of the person appearing in the fog. At a park, Laura enters a maze and James keeps trying to follow her, but he soon gets lost. Suddenly Maria appears behind him and asks about his plans. She decides to help him because he's the first normal person she's seen in weeks and there's strength in numbers. They manage to leave the maze, but when they reach the street, the radio starts screeching again. As a lying figure appears nearby, the duo hides behind a car and Maria holds James' hand. The creature spouts a bit of acid on the ground before walking away. Once it's gone, the duo comes out and James sees a building that triggers another memory. One day while he was wandering through the city, he saw Mary being dragged away by her creepy friends. He followed them into an alley, where he found a fence covered by posters. He ripped the paper off and pushed the fence to pass, only to find another fence at the opposite end. Then he noticed smoke coming from the ground, so he moved all the trash to discover a secret hatch with strange symbols. He opened it by pressing a button and went down the stairs to find a series of tunnels where he could hear the creepy people chanting. In the present, Maria takes James to the hospital, where he finds the patient's files and Maria discovers a bunch of tapes with medical notes. The doctor's voice describes some symptoms and blames them on exposure to an unidentified substance. The recording finishes with him asking Mary for her name. Maria tells James that there used to be rumors of a cult that worshipped Mary's father even after his death. In the next tape, the doctor mentions a potion that Mary drank for years and she admitted that it made her feel whole. All this makes James remember what he saw in the tunnels. The crowd was wearing black robes and making a masked Mary drink something from a small bottle. Then they lowered her body to the ground and started to drink her fluids. Someone recorded everything with a video camera, so the rituals were on the tapes they saw earlier. James is snapped out of his memories by another headache as the siren wails through town again. When his hand touches the floor, the darkness begins spreading through the room, making everything look rotten. Maria drags James out of the room, but they can't advance because they find half of the building destroyed and on fire. After taking a metal bar from a wheelchair, Maria and James take the opposite corridor, trying to find another exit. They run past many rooms with monsters and eventually enter one filled with bubblehead nurses. They're all holding tools and at first appear to be frozen. Suddenly a nurse starts banging on a stretcher, causing the others to wake up. The nurses start chasing after Maria and James, who go through the nearest door and run as fast as possible. Eventually they reach an elevator, but pressing the buttons does nothing. James decides to fight and starts bringing nurses down by hitting their heads with the metal bar. A nurse still manages to sneak into the elevator and stab Maria before James throws her out. Then he presses the buttons again and the elevator finally closes its doors, breaking some nurses' arms. As the elevator starts going up, James notices that Maria's wound is bleeding heavily. The elevator stops by getting stuck, so James has to use the metal bar to open it again. He picks Maria up and takes her to a room where he gets some bandages for her wound. Maria concludes that she looks a lot like Mary because of the way he looks at her. James gets uncomfortable and tells Maria to wait there while he checks the next floor. At the top of the stairs, James finds a locked door. While he tries to open it, Laura appears behind him and shows him her doll, which now looks very creepy and cries like a real baby. Laura yells at James for abandoning Mary, triggering a memory of James leaving Mary alone in their apartment. Then Laura says he must find Mary before it's too late and runs away. James keeps following the girl until she hides in room 318. When James enters the same room, Laura immediately goes out and locks the door. He yells at her and pounds on the door before he hears a strange noise. Suddenly a bed appears on the ceiling covered with giant sheets and Laura talks through the keyhole, wondering why James came. The sheets open to reveal a creepy humanoid creature whose nose drips blood on James' face like Mary used to. When he says her name, the creature pulls out 4 arms and grabs him before inserting a hand into his mouth. James struggles to breathe while Laura tells him to come back when he's ready. Suddenly James wakes up and finds himself in a hospital bed. He starts freaking out and a doctor tries to calm him down while telling him that he's in Brookhaven Hospital in Silent Hill. When he asks about Mary, Em enters the room and tells him he needs to let go because Mary has been dead for months. James can only cry as he tries to make sense of his memories. In the evening, James finally manages to remember something. When Mary returned to the apartment after the ritual, James told her they had to leave, mentioning what he saw in the tunnels as the reason. Mary admitted she had been in the cult since she was a little girl and she never had a choice because her father forced her. When Mary pointed out that James was scared, he yelled at her and shook her body, saying he wasn't scared at all. Mary pushed him and explained she tried to leave the cult, but James ruined her escape when she made him lose the bus. She reminded him that he promised he wouldn't leave her even in the worst times, but James did so anyway. On his way out, he noticed many faces watching him from the windows. In the present, Em tells another doctor that since James lost Mary, he lost his grip on reality and his desire to regain it. Then Em checks on James, explaining that the creepy version of Silent Hill is in his head and if he doesn't agree to do therapy, that hallucination will destroy him. After Em leaves the room, James looks out the window and sees a woman who looks like Mary on the street. The moths start landing on the glass and the alarm goes off as the darkness takes over the hospital once more. Suddenly James appears next to Maria, who tells him they should leave together since he couldn't find Mary. James notices how much she looks like Mary and Maria proceeds to kiss him, saying they could stay together there. However, James just walks away and gets in the elevator. Maria tries to stop him but he won't listen, so she decides to come with him. As the elevator quickly goes down, Maria's face sometimes turns creepy. Eventually the elevator stops and James walks into a corridor decorated with all the paintings he's made of Mary. The view from above reveals this is a maze. Maria keeps following him and insists he needs to accept this is over, but James says that she isn't real and calls her an obstacle before he grabs his head. The lights start flickering and Maria screams in pain as Pyramid Head appears behind her to kill her with his huge sword. As Maria bleeds all over the floor, James turns around and is shocked to see his own face under the pyramid helmet. Another flashback shows a drunk James frustrated with his art and painting a pyramid over his portrait to avoid looking at his own face. It seems this creature is the manifestation of his guilt. The apartment in the memory suddenly shifts and throws James into the water with all his Mary art. Suddenly James appears on the shore and is surprised to see a building burning nearby. He goes inside and finds Laura, who is running around and hiding behind the furniture. When she finally emerges, she wears Mary's face for a second. She asks James to remember the truth, so a flashback shows him leaving flowers at Mary's grave. Her full name is Mary Angela Laura Crane, which means that Angela, Laura, and Maria are all parts of James' imagination based on different aspects of Mary's personality. James runs through a corridor on fire and enters a room where he finds Angela. She's having a breakdown while two creepy hands grab her legs to keep her from escaping. It represents all the abuse Mary received from her father since she was a child. When James tries to help her, the hands pull Angela through the mattress and James falls into the hole too. The bed has transformed into a monster that looks like Mary's dad and is keeping Angela in its grasp. James gently cradles her head and apologizes, causing her to catch on fire and explode. After staring at the bloody remains, James leaves the room and sees Mary at the end of the corridor. He follows her up the stairs until they make it to the roof. Mary's body is on a bed, causing him to remember the time he returned to Silent Hill after the breakup. Mary had been terribly sick because of her father's potion and had no chance of survival. She asked James for mercy, so after lots of hesitation, James pressed a towel on her face to kill her as he cried. On the fiery roof, James is finally letting go so the bed floats up and the moths surround it. The sheets open to reveal Mary's creepy form, who makes James float to her arms and hugs him to express her forgiveness. Then James reappears with the body on the normal roof. Concluding that he can never forgive himself, James puts Mary's body in his car and drives to the nearest lake. The car falls into the water and James thinks they can finally be together if he self-deletes. Suddenly the truck reappears, and James finds himself back in his first meeting with Mary. The bus leaves again, so this time James offers to drive her to the city instead of taking her back to Silent Hill. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.